Hello everyone, welcome to PRATHAM Test Prep YouTube channel. I am Ashish Bhargav and welcome to another episode of Daily News Analysis. So in this YouTube session that we discussed about many important news that we covered from the Indian Express and the Hindu. I hope you guys are doing well. And now as we know in daily news analysis that we cover from the international news, economy based news, sports based news, science and tech news, person in news, summits and conference, miscellaneous and national news. Apart from these that we cover is also a Supreme Court verdict, which is very important for the especially for the CLAT and AILET students and various law entrance exam. And as we know that daily news analysis is very important because most of the portion that I have covered in this news article. So once you have read the very carefully, once you got the each concept, which is very beneficial for the students who are preparing for the exam. Now, as we know, if your voice is high, only a few people will hear. If your thought is high, then many people will listen. So to inculcate this thought process, what you need to do, you have to follow the daily newspaper analysis, which is very important. Now, as we have initiated questions of the day, and that questions of the day is important at the end of the YouTube session, that I will ask to you 3 to 5 questions, which is very important and that has directly extracted from the Hindu and Indian Express and the various newspaper. So as we know that to gathering information and solving question, there are two different things. To try to follow, like to solve the questions, which is very important, to having practicing of solving MCQs. Here's the first question. The Supreme Court puts an two-finger test of rape survivor. So what was the issues earlier? Earlier it was because Supreme Court once said that it is against someone's dignity and right to privacy. The rape victims has to be of two-finger test in their hymen to check whether they have rape assault or not. Supreme Court on Monday declared that any person conducting an invasive two-finger or three-finger vaginal test on rape on sexual assault survivors will be found guilty of misconduct. So this is the main crux of the passage. And in the judgment, a bench led by Justice D.Y. Chandrachud said that sole reason behind using the regressive test on the, we can say, traumatized sexual assault survivor is to see whether the woman or girl is habituated to sexual intercourse. Such a concern was irrelevant to fact whether she was raped or not. Previous sexual experience is that we can say immaterial to the questions of conduct. So the logic behind the test was a woman cannot be believed when she said that she was raped merely for the reason that she was sexually active. That was the court statement. So this so-called test has no scientific basis and neither proves nor disapproves allegations of rape, if instead re-victims and re-traumatized women who may have been sexually assaulted. So that's why the Supreme Court has banned now. While next Supreme Court verdict asserts center not to new sedition cases, government re-examines provisions. Appearing before CJI Chief Justice of India, Lalit, the Attorney General said something may happen. And as we know, session of Parliament court said like order freeze of arrest and prosecutions under 124A. This is something that we can say draconian, which means that this is something which is an arbitrary manner. So as we know, if we go to the history of sedition cases, the Patel Saab and Jawaharlal Nehru has also faced sedition charges at the time of when they write something against the government and when they criticism about the British government. So while we go to the deep, then we got to know the sedition law in our country. So first, initially, we have to find it out the historical background of the sedition law. Sedition law was enacted in 17th century England when lawmakers believed that only good opinions of the government should survive, as bad opinions were detrimental to the government and monarchy. The law was originally drafted in 1837 by Thomas Macaulay, the British historian politician, but it was inexplicably omitted when the Indian Penal Code was enacted in 1860. Before making constitution, that Indian Penal Code was also there. Section 124A was Section 124, which means IPC Section 124A was inserted in 1870 by an amendment introduced by Sir James Stephen when it failed that need of specific section to deal with the offences. Sedition law is a crime under section 124A of the Indian Penal Code. So basically sedition, what exactly means? Once you are writing against the government, a government procedure in the way of like decoding someone, like we can say, or the symbolic form that you are criticizing the government, not in a constructive manner, that it comes under the sedition law. Now section 124A IPC defines sedition is an offence committed when any person by words, either spoken or written, or signs or visual representation, or otherwise brings an attempt to bring into hatred or contempt, or excites the attempt to disaffection towards the government established by law in India. Disaffection includes disloyalty of all feeling of enmity. However, comments without exciting or attempting to excite hatred, contempt, or disaffection will not constitute an offence under this section. So once you are writing something which is against the government, that comes under the sedition. But punishment, sedition is a non-bailable offence. Punishment under the section 124A ranges from imprisonment up to 3 years to a lifetime, to which fine may be added. And a person charged under this law is barred from the government job. This is a very critical, because in our youth, if you are writing something against the government on the Twitter, that which is against the, like we can say, freedom of speech and expression, which is enshrined in Article 19, this is against the is working. That's why some articles you have seen in the newspaper, it is draconian law. A person charged under this law is barred from a government job. They have to live without their passport and must produce themselves in the court at all times as when required. What is the issue of the sedition law? That was, if you talk about the relic of colonial era, it was talking about like colonial administrators use sedition to lock up people when criticized the British policies. Stalwart of freedom movements such as Lokmanya Tilak, Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Bhagat Singh, etc. were convicted for their seditious speeches, writing and activities under British law. Thus, rampant use of sedition law recalls the colonial era. So many freedom fighters was also writing against the government, that was also, we can say, was faced the sedition law. Next news is important because had Sardar Patel has been the first PM, many problems would not have arisen. Because as we know, it's a great contribution of, we can say, Iron Man of India. And we talk about Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. He was supposed to become the first PM in our country, but there are many reasons for this that we go into the detail. And we cannot forget the contributions of the Sardar Patel. As we know that he was a person who has joined many princely states in our country, more than 500 princely states in our country. So to make it unite, and the dream has seen that saw earlier by the Chanakya, the Akhand Bharat. So that unite India had to be done by the princely states by the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. So we cannot forget that the contributions towards the nations of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. So what exactly we have to go very depth about Sardar Patel, so that we got to know what was the contributions of him. National Unity Day 2020. On National Unity Day 2020, the Union Home Minister of India remembers Sardar Patel Vallabhbhai Patel on 147th birth anniversary. This anniversary need to be recalled, 147th. Why the National Unity Day celebrated? National Unity Day is celebrated every on 31st of October to commemorate the birth anniversary of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. It is also known as Rashtriya Ekta Divas. Make sure you have to recall the name of in Hindi also, Rashtriya Ekta Divas, or we can say 31st October is known as the birth anniversary of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. So date is National Unity Day. National Unity Day is celebrated 31st of October, and which birth anniversary, this one is 147th. It is also known as Rashtriya Ekta Divas. The reason behind the celebration of this day is to make people aware of the ideas of staying together and uplifting society. It was celebrated for the first time in 2014 when BJP is in the government. Several events are organized on this day. Run for Unity, a nationwide marathon to increase awareness about the contribution of Sardar Patel to national integrity, national unity and pledge. What is the status of unity? Statue of Unity is tallest statue in the world as 182 meters. It is 23 meters taller than China's Spring Temple Buddha. statue and almost double the height of the Statue of Liberty, which is 93 meters. In January 2020, it was added to 8 wonders of Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO). And who was Sardar Patel? We now go to the details. He was born on 31st October 1875 in Nadiad, Gujarat. Sardar Patel was the first Home Minister and Deputy Prime Minister of India. So this fact is very need to be recalled. Sardar Patel was the first Home Minister, and earlier, it was Deputy Prime Minister post. Now it has been completely abolished because many democratic nations have been raising the issues because that no needed of Deputy Prime Minister post. He is recognized the real unified of India for his colossal contributions of integrate make India united, Ek Bharat, Akhand Bharat, that we can say Ek Bharat or Akhand Bharat as an independent nation. As we know, he headed various committee of the Constituent Assembly. As we know that the Constituent Assembly, the reason for the establish the Constituent Assembly for the reason that we can form our own constitution, for our own constitution. That's why we form our Constituent Assembly. So Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights. So he was the chief. Committee on Minority and Tribal and Excluded Area, Provincial Constitution Committee, and major contribution, he worked extensively against alcohol consumption, untouchability, caste discrimination, and for women emancipation in Gujarat and the outside of the country. Women of Bardoli Satyagraha, you cannot forget like Bardoli. Bardoli bestowed the Sardar on Vallabhbhai Patel because the women of Bardoli the first time said the title Sardar. Sardar, which means that person who fight against the evils of the society. So he bestowed the title Sardar on Vallabhbhai Patel. So if the questions raises, the first time when the Vallabhbhai Patel got the title Sardar, we can say Bardoli Satyagraha. It is in the women of Bardoli titled him as a Sardar, which means a chief of a leader, chief or a leader. During the 1930s Salt Satyagraha, which means Dandi March, prayer of fasting movement, Sardar Patel served 3 months imprisonment. In March 1931, Patel presided over the Karachi session, 46th session of the INC of Indian National Congress, which was called upon the ratify of Gandhi-Irwin Pact. As we know that it's a great impact of Gandhi-Irwin Pact, and the Round Table Conference was in 1930, 31, 32, and the only one person who joined all these Round Table Conference, that was the person is B.R. Ambedkar. Integration of princely state. Sardar Patel played a key role in the integration of 565 princely states. At the time of independence, there are many princely states. They are demanding for their own constitution, and the Patel Sahab has done the we can say a marvelous work to unite the India. Few princely states like Travancore, Hyderabad, Junagadh, Bhopal, and Kashmir were adverse to joining the state of India. They are demanding for the self-constitution, which is, as we know that scheduled caste demanding the separate constitution, scheduled tribes demanding separate constitution, and the princely state demanding separate constitution, and the king of the Nizam of Hyderabad, they are demanding separate constitution. So in that scenario, we can say, if we go to the too much past in our modern history, that we got to know that if the country is disintegrated in many parts, how we can say is unite. So because of Sardar Patel worked tirelessly to build a consensus with the princely states, but did not hesitate to employing method of Sam, Dam, and Dand. Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed, wherever necessary. He had used forces to annex princely state of Junagadh, ruled by Nawab, and Hyderabad, rule of Nizam, both of whom had wished not to merge their respective states with the Union of India. He is known as Iron Man of India for playing an important role in unifications and integration of Indian princely states into the Indian Federation, and for convincing princely states to align with Indian Union. So that we cannot forget the contribution of Sardar Patel. Here the third news is decentralized MG Naregas for better implementation, said government. What exactly is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Guarantee Act? First, we talk about MG Naregas, which means Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. So, what exactly the scheme is talking about? MG Narega, which means that they are talking about, the scheme is talking about the 100 days mandatory 100 days mandatory job for the people who is living in the rural areas who must be 18 years plus. So if you talk about MG Naregas, so why this one is a news? Because an internal study commissioned by Ministry of Rural Development has argued for decentralization of Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, allowing for more flexibility at the ground level. And the ministry recently made public the report of the 6th Common Review Mission, which surveyed several states like we can say Andhra Pradesh and Arunachal Pradesh, Karnataka, Nagaland, Gujarat, Jharkhand and Himachal Pradesh. What is the dearth of funds in MG Naregas? Issue relating to development. The central flagship rural employment schemes has run off funds halfway through the financial year. This means that payment for the MG Naregas workers as well as material cost will be delayed unless the state dip into their own funds. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, earlier known as National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, that was passed in 2005 to augmented employment generations and the social security of India. While we talk about the social securities, as it is termed the social security, which means that in simple word, the person's got at least one social security that is known to be a, we can say a that person known to be a, we can say like gig workers, as in permanent job. So once the person got the social security like a health schemes and many scheme, that in that case we can say the scheme is demand driven wage employment scheme which functions under the Ministry of Rural Development. Every adult member of household in rural areas with a job card is eligible for the job under this scheme. Make sure adult members within more than 18 years. The scheme envisages providing 100 days of guaranteed wage employment in the financial year to adult members volunteers for unskilled manual work. Unskilled, which means the person not to be skilled. Unskilled manual work. So if the formal sector job, if we talk about the formal sector of an informal sector job, in the formal sector job, if we talk about the social security, in the formal sector, the person get enjoyment of social security. An informal sector job, that means that we can say gig workers and Swiggy and Zomato delivery agent, they will not get any kind of social security. That's why government are planning to do many schemes and initiatives. This scheme is a demand-driven wage employment scheme which function under the Ministry of Rural Development, and every adult member of household in rural area job card eligible for job under this scheme, that should be unskilled workers. This scheme envisages providing 100 days of guaranteed wage employment in the financial year to adult member volunteers for unskilled manual work. It covers all districts of India except the ones of 100% urban population. This is also provision for the additional 50 days of unskilled wage employment in drought, natural calamity notified rural areas. As per the section 3 of the MG Narega, the state may have provisions to provide additional day beyond the period guaranteed under the act from their own funds. While we talk about the next news, China launched their third and final module of Tiangong Space Station. So China successfully launched the final module of Tiangong Space Station on Monday, inching closer to its completion by the end of the year. The module named Mangtian, or Dreaming of the Heavens, was launched on Long March 5B rocket from the Wenqing Launch Center of China tropical island. Why the news important? Because we need to compare the what our space station is doing it, and it's the first time if we talk about like China launched an unnamed module named Taihane or Harmony of the Heavens, the permanent space station 2021. Its plans to complete by the end of 2020. And you know what? Taihane Core module is the first module to launch the Tiangong space station module. China is going to operationalize the new Tiangong multi-module space station for the less than 10 years. It is a part of China manned space program and the country's first long-term space stations. And what is the importance of this launch for China? Because China is the only third country in history to have put both astronauts into space and to build a space station the first country who built the space station in the space station and astronauts into space, the Russia, and second in US. So we need to recall the uh, name is China is the third country in the history of who puts astronauts into space and built a space station after Russia and US. Now moving further, how Lula made a comeback of beating a sitting president. This is not more important until unless जब तक इसमें कोई outcome नहीं आए, that is no more important. Now India H1 fiscal deficit touches 6.2 crore tax receipt rise. तो इसमें GSTs के बारे में that we have already covered in many articles. What is the role of GST? Core sector output grew 7.9% in September, faster than 3 months. So if you talk about production of 8 infrastructure sectors expanded by 7.9%. So coal having 3 types like lignite, bituminous, peat and anthracite. So 4 types. What kind of coal that we can found? Which state growing maximum number of coal production in India? So that we need to keep in mind. So it is a type of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels which means that any like we can say plant bodies which is we can say जो अर्थ के नीचे आपके दब जाते हैं, which is more than 100 and 200 years, that is converted into the fossil fuels found in form of sedimentary rocks, and it is often known as black gold. So coal is also known as black gold. It is conventional source of energy and widely available. It is used as domestic fuel in industries such as iron and steel industry, because as we know stainless steel industry the carbon is required. So steam engine and to generate electricity. Electricity from coal is called thermal power. The leading coal producers of the world include China, US, Australia, Indonesia and India. What is the distribution of coal in India? So Gondwana coal field 250 million years old, and Gondwana coal makes 98% of total reserves and 99% of production of coal in India. Gondwana coal forms India metallurgical grade. Metallurgical which means that once the ore is extracted from any, like for example if we talk about iron, the ore is hematite and Fe2O3. When hematite is extracted from the earth, that we can say it requires some kind of different chemicals that is known to metallurgical grade, as well as superior quality coal. It found in Damodar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Mahanadi, Chhattisgarh, Odisha area, Godavari, Maharashtra and Narmada valleys. Tertiary coal fields 15 to 16 million years old. Carbon content is only very low but rich in moisture and sulfur. Tertiary coal fields are mainly confined to extra peninsular region. Peninsular region which means when the 3 parts is covered with the water, one side is the earth, that is known to be a peninsula. Important areas include Assam, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, Himalayas, foothills of Darjeeling and West Bengal, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and Kerala. Now if we talk about the classification which we have already discussed, anthracite is having 18 to 95% of carbon content, found in a small quantity in Jammu and Kashmir, and bituminous is 16 to 80% of carbon content is found in Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha, Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh. Lignite we can say 40 to 55% carbon content, high moisture content and found in Rajasthan, Lakhimpur, and that Lakhimpur is not located in Uttar Pradesh because some Lakhimpur is also located. Lakhimpur Kheri is located in Uttar Pradesh, but that Lakhimpur is in Assam and Tamil Nadu. Peat, that is less than 40% carbon content. It is the first stage of transformation from organic matter, wood to coal. So there are 4 types of anthracite having maximum: bituminous, lignite and peat. And the next article is death penalty and humanizing criminal justice. So if you talk about this article, because it's very important because of how the criminal justice is taken in India. As we know, it is in the IPC and CRPC. There are 2 sections which is responsible for this. Now, as we know, the IPC sections 345, 344, clause 3, Code of Criminal Procedure, judicial limitation following from the rarest of rare case, and we can say oral hearing after all the remedies to the commended are exhausted. So we will go to the in short what is the criminal justice procedure in our country. The transmission of criminal justice system with the wave of time, something worth notice from premature, primitive, customary legal system to present modern, complicated judicial framework. Indian, what is the structure of criminal justice system in India? Indian criminal justice system is composed of government agencies that enforce of law and execute crimes and correct criminal behavior. Adjudicate crimes and correct criminal behavior. It has four systems. Legislature, which is parliament, can make a law, and in general we can say that is here is executive, legislature, and judiciary. So we India have independent judiciary system. So government of India are functioning with the executive, legislation, and judiciary. Who is the executive? We can say executive head of the government is Prime Minister, and in short, executive head of India is President of India. And legislature, which means that we can say Parliament. Enforcement, so we have to understand what the four subsystem of criminal justice system in our country. So first is legislature, which is Parliament. Enforcement, which is the police, and adjudication, which means courts, and correction, which means prisons, community facilities. So the first, second, and third, and fourth. How the criminal justice system involved in India? Throughout India's history, different criminal justice systems have involved and gained prominence in different regions under different rules. As we know, in the colonial era, the criminal laws were codified in India, which remains largely unchanged even today, which is Indian Penal Code. So Indian Penal Code is the official criminal code of India, drafted in 1860 in the wake of first law commission established in 1834 under the Charter Act 1833. And in the same line, the Code of Criminal Procedure, which is CRPC, provides procedure for the administering criminal law in India. It was enacted in 1973 and became effective in 1st April 1974. So if you talk about the IPC and CRPC, there is a huge difference. So IPC is a basically criminal code of which is enacted in 1860, but before making Indian Constitution. But the CRPC, which was provides procedure for the administering criminal law in India, and enacted 1973 after once we got freedom and became effective in 1st April 1974. Now it's time to questions of the day. And as we know, the questions of the day is very important, because once you will solve, you will got to know, you will become very confident that yes, I am able to solve it. So here the first question, if we talk about, consider the following statement regarding GDP deflator. GDP deflator is a measure of level of prices of all new domestically produced final goods and services in an economy in a year. Unlike the CPI, GDP deflator is based on a fixed basket of goods and services. When GDP deflator is negative, it necessarily means that there is an inflation in the economy. And you have to choose which one is the correct options. Take your time. CPI, which means Consumer Price Index. CPI, which means Consumer Price Index. There are two price index in our economy: Wholesale Price Index and Consumer Price Index. So obvious, the Consumer Price Index, GDP deflator, is based on fixed basket of goods and services. So only C option is correct. So in economies, GDP deflator is measure of the level of prices of all new domestically produced final goods and services in an economy in a year. Like the Consumer Price Index, CPI, GDP deflator is a measure of price inflation or deflation with respect to a specific base year. And GDP deflator is a more comprehensive inflation measure than the CPI index, because it's based on a fixed basket of goods. When GDP deflator is negative, nominal GDP is less than the real GDP, it means that there is a deflation in an economy. Now the second question. Now we had discussed in this newspaper article Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. So consider the following statement about Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. He was one of the main leaders of Kheda Satyagraha 1918 and Bardoli Satyagraha 1928. He was appointed the 49th President of Indian National Congress. For his commitment of national integration, he is known as Iron Man of India. Which statement is correct? So all the statement was correct. Vallabhbhai Patel was 31st October 1875 to 15th December 1950. Popularly known as Sardar Patel, was the first Deputy Prime Minister and Home Minister of India. He was the main leader of Kheda Satyagraha 1918 and Bardoli Satyagraha. And that Bardoli Satyagraha, women of Bardoli was given the title of Sardar. The women of Bardoli gave him the title of Sardar. He was appointed as the 49th President of Indian National Congress, organizing the party for the elections of 1934-1937 while promoting the Quit India movement, which was launched in 8th August 1942. For his commitment to national integration, he is known as the Iron Man of India, and he also remembered the patron saint of India's civil servant for having established modern All India services. A statue of unity, the world's tallest statue, was dedicated to him on 31st October 2018, and that day we celebrate as a Unity Day, National Unity Day. He headed the following committee of the Constituent Assembly: Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights, Committee on Minorities of Tribal and Excluded Areas, and Provincial Constitution. Consider the following statement. Article 44 of the Constitution lays down the state shall have endeavored to secure UCC, which means Universal Civil Code, for the citizens throughout the territory of India. In India, Nagaland is the only state where UCC has been implemented. Which statement is correct? Obvious statement 1 is correct. Article 44 of the Constitution lays down the state shall endeavor to secure a UCC for the citizens throughout the territory of India. Goa is the only state where UCC has been implemented, not Nagaland. The second statement was incorrect. Third one. In the last class we discussed on the yesterday YouTube session of daily news analysis that we discussed about the dolphin. So here is the statement about Gangetic dolphins. Dolphins have been included in Schedule 1 of the Indian Wildlife Protection Act 1972. International Union for the Conservation of Nature has listed the Gangetic dolphin as an endangered species in India. The Gangetic river dolphin is the official animal of the Indian city of Guwahati. कल जो आपकी YouTube सेशन हुई थी डेली न्यूज एनालिसिस की, दैट वी हैव ऑलरेडी कवर्ड अबाउट द डॉल्फिन, तो ट्राई टू सॉल्व. So D would be the answer because of the reason, as we know, all this statement is correct. Dolphin have been included in Schedule 1 of the Indian Wildlife Protection Act 1972 and Appendix 1 of the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species sites, and IUCN status is endangered. There are also one among the 22 species identified under the centrally sponsored scheme Development of Wildlife Habitat. Ganges River dolphin has been recognized as the Government of India's national aquatic animal and is the official animal of Indian city of Guwahati. The national aquatic animal is Ganges dolphin. So I hope you enjoyed this session a lot. If you are new in this channel, please subscribe it, and if you have any questions regarding this, please let me know in the comment section. We'll meet you tomorrow at the same time at 11:30. Stay tuned and take care. Bye bye and take care. Thank you so much for joining with us. Bye bye and take care. Thank you.